Welcome back, friends, to the homestead. So a video or two back, I turned on the camera. We just sat down and kind of had a conversation, talked a little bit about sobriety and such. And I got a lot of good response from that. A lot of you reached out in personal comments and letters and such and said, hey, could you do more of that? We really enjoyed doing that. Some of us listen at work. We're not able to watch, and we turn that on. And could you do a podcast or some sort of form like that? I don't know how to do a podcast, I guess, but more importantly than that, I don't know that I have enough interesting things to talk about that would keep even to produce something like that. But what I can do is, I guess, when an inspiration strikes, I can turn on the camera and we can talk about some different things and how they relate to all of us, because we're all in this together, right? So today I want to talk about the second best-selling book of all time, published in 1678, if memory serves. Does anyone know what book that is? Of course, we all know what the number one book is, right? This is the number two book, and it was written by John Bunyan, and it is The Pilgrim's Progress. Probably some of you have read it. If you haven't, you need to read it. It's something that I reread, even if I listen to it on audiobook annually. It is a book that has been translated into over 100 languages, and if you know anything about John Bunyan, and he was not a highly educated man, the fact that he was able to produce this masterpiece, people still wonder today. I wonder today how it happened. Divinely inspired, no question. But what it is, it's an allegory of the Christian walk, of the life experience of what a Christian can expect from the conversion till the very end. And an allegory, if you don't know, is a way of teaching using a story that's relatable, that will help people to understand a particular topic. It was a way of teaching that Christ used all the time, whether it be the wheat and the tares, or the sheep and the goats, and all of those many stories that we have in the New Testament, right? So, I want to pick a particular story out of the Pilgrim's Progress, and it's one of my personal favorites. It's just a short story here. I took a little clip of it here that I want to, let me just read a portion of it to you, and we'll comment on it, and we'll just kind of see where it goes, because I think it's really important for us to hear this. It was important for me to hear it today, and it might be something that you can apply or you can use. So just to set this up, so Christian, which is the main character in this, has left the city of destruction. And he has what Bunyan refers to as a burden on his back. And that burden, he's like carrying a big load of weight that's just crushing him down, right? And that burden represents the sin in his life. And he wants to be free of this sin. He wants to be free of this burden, but he doesn't know how to get rid of it. So he starts on this journey, as a man tells him, if you start on this journey, I can direct you to someone that will take this burden off your back, right? So he's on his journey, and we come in midstream here, and he's just spent the night at a lodge, and he's getting ready to go resume his journey up a path when he's met by two characters. And we'll pick up the story from right there. So John Bunyan writes, so looking very, very narrowly before him as he went, he espied two lions in the way. Now, thought he, I see the dangers that mistrust and timorous were driven back by. The lions were chained, but he did not see the chains. So right before the story started, these two men come screaming down the path, warning him, turn back, there are two roaring lions up there. If you go any further, they'll destroy you. They'll tear you to shreds. And it's interesting that John Bunyan, he gives names to all these particular characters that Christian runs into. And these particular ones are called mistrust and timorous. What does timorous mean? Timorous means timid, being very, you can just imagine it, being very timid and, not willing to rock the boat, kind of skulking and hiding in the corners. And his friend is mistrust, and that pretty much speaks for itself. What does mistrust mean? It's the lack of trust, the lack of faith, right? So these two characters come down, and these characters, what they're representing are fears that a Christian would experience when he's ultimately facing adversity or difficulty, right? Let's read on here. Then he was afraid, and he thought also to himself that he should go back after them, for he thought nothing but death was before him. But the porter at the lodge, whose name was Watchful, perceiving that Christian made a halt, as if he would go back, cried unto him, saying, Is thy strength so small? Fear not for the lions, they are chained, and they are placed there for a trial of faith, where it is, and for discovery of those that have none. Keep in the midst of the path, and nothing will harm you. So this innkeeper, right when Christian he's just been, we'll just set the whole scene, right? He's on his path, and these two guys are running back, and he's looking around, and he's really struggling, right? This is a trial for him. This is where he's really struggling with this, and everything, all of his in his mind, and it is telling him that the prudent thing would be to go back, right? And at that very moment, and we don't know what he was going to do. We don't know if he was going to brave it and go forward and find out for himself, or if he was going to come back. But it does give us the impression that maybe he was wavering and he was thinking about doing the smart thing, which seemed to him was to go back, right? And right at that very moment when he was about to lose faith and about to waver, the innkeeper below calls up to him and gives him encouragement, right? Well, what is the innkeeper? What does that represent? Faithful. What does faithful mean? To be trustworthy. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what faithful is. I think what we have there is faithful is represented as the helper from God, right? And what is that helper? That helper is the Holy Spirit. Christ told us, right? I will send you a helper to help you in those difficult times. And we'll find ourselves, and I have found myself many times when we get to a spot where we are really lacking courage and we don't think we have what it takes to go on, that still small voice that comes up, that little tiny spark, that little tiny bit of help is just enough to get you over the edge, right? And that's what it means by when Christ said, I will send you a helper. It's that in those times of need, when we've absolutely reached the end of our rope and we don't know how we could possibly go on, that's when we'll be sent a helper to get us through that. So the interesting story about this is that what this means for us is that, you know, if we come up against things that we think are just insurmountable, obstacles that we can't overcome, more times than not, it's been my experience that you build them up in your mind bigger, and they're much worse than they actually are. Take, for example, all of these remodel projects and these unfinished things, these honey-do lists, these things you have around your house, right? How long have you put off? Yeah, I need to fix that old bike, or I need to fix this or fix this door, all that. And the more time goes on, the more you build this up into a thing where it's just almost insurmountable. It's just such a big thing that it's just this millstone of dread around your neck, and you just think that it's going to be such a massive project that you're reluctant to even get started on it. But what's the truth of it? Well, my experience is once you decide and you resolve, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you get your tools out and you dig into it, and 3 or 4 hours later the project's done and you think, good grief, why didn't I do that earlier? This wasn't that big of a deal at all. It's once you take that step and start moving forward at it and stop exercising and stop listening to those demons in your mind, is when you find out that it really wasn't that big of an obstacle at all. And what's so fascinating about this story is here you have Christian is seeing something and he's being told something, so he's trusting his senses. He's trusting his fellow men, which are coming down. But what are these men doing? They're not telling him the truth. And it's not that they're just being deceitful. It's that they're just as blind as he is. So that for us is we have to be careful who we take advice from and who we listen to. That's why I've always told you guys, don't listen to me. Don't listen to any men or any preachers or any of that, and put your faith, I'm not saying don't listen to them, but don't put 100% of your faith in them. If they have something to offer you, or some information or some insight, that's good. But always keep your focus on the source, and that source is God, not men. That's my biggest problem with the Catholic Church. The problem with the Catholic Church is that it teaches that you need to go to a man to confess your sins. You need to go to a man to resolve your guilt, to resolve your sin. It's an intermediary that's been placed between the sinner, between the Christian, and the Heavenly Father. And that's not biblical. That's not correct, and that's why I reject it. I would never join the Catholic Church. I would never call any man father. I have a father, and that father is my Heavenly Father, and I don't confess my sins, or I don't have anything to do with anyone that is a sinful man. So that's where I stand on that. So here we have Christian here. He's listening to his own fears. He's listening to the fears of men, but they're not true. And all he needs to do is to take maybe one or two more steps, and his vision will be clearer, and he can see for himself that indeed those lions are chained. The path, as long as he stays on the path that he's been told to stay on, will protect him and keep him safe, because the lions are chained on each side and they can't reach the middle. If he were to stray off to the left, or if he were to stray off to the right, he would be torn and devoured by the lions. And that path is referencing the straight and narrow. And when we find ourselves off the path that God has given us and wandering away, that's when we put ourselves in the clutches or within the reach of danger, within the reach of the lions. That's what he's talking about. C.S. Lewis, of course. I said the other day that, what's his name? The author of The Old Man and the Sea. I don't know, I can't think of it right now. Was my favorite author. That's wrong. He's my second favorite author. C.S. Lewis is my favorite author. C.S. Lewis gives such a good analogy of this, about the difference between belief and faith. He tells a story. He said, Pete's a story of, there's a guy, there's a high wire act, right? And there's a guy that's got a wire stretched across 2 skyscrapers, and we've got people up on the roof and they're watching. This is quite an event, right? We can picture the whole thing. These things are really popular in the 20s and stuff. And he's got this little wheelbarrow, and he gets on the wire, and he's got the wheelbarrow, and he goes across, and he comes back, and he goes across, and he comes back, and the crowd's cheering, and everyone's, this is amazing, amazing someone could do that, right? 60 stories up. Well, he comes back to the guy that's standing there, and he says, do you believe that I can do it again? And he says, well, of course I believe you can do it again. I just watched you do it twice. He says, well, get in my wheelbarrow. And the guy says, oh, I'm not getting in your wheelbarrow. And the guy says, aha, you believe, but you have no faith, right? And I love that story because that really plays into, and of course C.S. Lewis was a huge fan of John Bunyan, and that plays into this whole thing about belief and faith. We believe that God will protect us. We believe that God will show us which way to go and what to do and all of that. But we don't have faith oftentimes. We hear the lions roaring. We listen to the men and all of the people running back, telling us that we're on a fool's errand and we're going to be destroyed. And we subscribe to that fear, and we never are able to complete the journey and to go down the path. Because the redemption is the only way to reach the celestial city is to stay on the straight and narrow path and to skirt right between these 2 lions, right? But ultimately there is no danger. And that's where faith comes in. So when we reach particular points in our life where we think we just don't know where to go, and God seems to be silent to us, and we just can't figure things out, that's when we need to remember this story, and we need to remember the importance of faith. What for faith comes in those situations is all he needed to do was to take that one step. And that's true for us. When we don't know where to go, when we're afraid, when we don't seem to have the courage, if we take that smallest little step, that's all he's asking for us. Not to go fight the lions, not to have hand-to-hand combat with them. He's already taken care of the lions. He's paved the path. Everything is there for you. He's only asking you to do one little thing, to meet him halfway and to take that little step, right? Take that little step, and then things will open up to you, and that faith, that's where you need faith, will carry you through that one step, and then you can go on and you can enjoy the promises of God, right? It's an amazing and wonderful story, and it's something that a guy could think and contemplate on forever. It shows the importance of having courage. I have had a hard time with organized religion and attending a lot of these churches, and I've been to a lot of them because I don't see strong men that are willing to take on lions in them. I see faithless, and I see the timid character sitting there. And if you are not being challenged in your faith, if you're not having struggles, and if it's not a fight to you, if you don't feel like you're a warrior half the time, then you might as well just stop going to church altogether. If you're showing up on Saturday, if you're showing up on Sunday, and you're sitting there and you're listening to a sermon and enjoying the nice music, and you're not being tried, and you're not in fear sometimes, and if you're not having to man up and show courage, you might as well just quit. Just quit going, because what you're doing is you're just wasting a good Saturday, and you're just wasting a good Sunday. God told us what? He said, I would rather you be hot or cold than you to be lukewarm. Because you're lukewarm, I spit you, I vomit you out of my mouth. That's how much contempt God shows for someone that's a fence sitter. He would rather have you be out drinking and shooting heroin and at least doing something extreme. I'm taking some liberties here. I don't know if I should go that far. But you could make that argument than someone that's just kind of a milquetoast man sitting in the middle, showing up every Sunday and every Saturday and not doing anything. If you don't have the courage to profess your faith for coworkers or family members or in public, then you have no business even calling yourself a Christian. If you're not being persecuted and being attacked online, in public, then you're not doing something right, because a Christian religion is a fighting religion, and you're going to be fighting, but you're not going to be fighting alone. You have a helper that will help you. You do need to step forward in faith sometimes. You do need to step out of your comfort zone and meet him halfway to receive those blessings, to receive that power. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy at all. I'll tell you what, I'll close with this. You need to have the courage, if you're calling yourself a Christian in a Christian family, you need to have a courage that when you're in public in a restaurant to say grace, no matter who's there or who's watching you. And I know it's uncomfortable. It's even, we do this. We make a point of doing this, so this is an important thing, because it is a sign. It takes, I know some people may laugh at me, but it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to be different and to stand out from the normal people. I've seen people that claim to be devout people that didn't have the balls, pardon my expression, didn't have the courage to say grace in front of their family in a crowded restaurant. And if that's the extent of your Christianity, and if that's the extent of your courage, you might as well just throw in the towel and just give it up, because you're not worthy of it. I'm so sick and tired of excuses. I'm so sick and tired of trying to make nice and trying not to offend everyone. You know what people see, how important that is when they see a normal, oh goodness, the adversary doesn't want us to have this conversation. How unusual that is for people to see that, a family sitting down together that's not crazy or weird or goofy and having a public grace at a restaurant. That might be the only real thing, the real Christianity that some of these people have ever seen. The only, because what they're seeing that's being portrayed on media and Hollywood is Christians as being dumb, backwards, ignorant, uncool, wearing silly clothes. That is a constant drumbeat. That's all by design. That's all to undermine it. It's all to plant something in the seed of people's heads to make them think something that's unreal. It's inverting. It's turning things upside down. And I'll tell you what, I can't even count the number of times that we have done this, and people have come up to us afterwards and even right to the table and said, "Excuse me, I want to thank you for doing that. I've never seen anyone do that before." Some people are Christian, some people are not. But it's surprised me of what a testimony that is. What they're seeing is they're seeing a family that's not afraid to profess their faith. It's not afraid to be Christians. It's not lacking the courage to publicly proclaim what you believe and what you stand for. It's a powerful, powerful testimony. So if you don't have the courage to do that, then you might as well just hang it up. Christ says, I'll close with this, if you're ashamed of me, I will be ashamed of you in that time when you need an advocate before the Father. And that's a terrible and fearful thing, right? And I'm not saying this, again, I got to really preface this, I'm not saying this to say that we've arrived or that we're perfect. But I'll tell you what, God recognizes those small little attempts at faith, those little, just taking small steps to Him, and He'll empower you and He'll give you the courage to stand up. How strong and how encouraged would you be if you had done that and you were seeing 2 and 3 families doing that together? Would that put you from off the defense and put you onto the offense? Would that give you strength and encouragement and faith to go forward and to not compromise and to be ashamed of what you believe and what you stand for? It's a powerful testimony. And this, I really love this story. I really encourage you to get it. Even if you don't have time to read books, get an Audible account. They're not that expensive, and listen to it in the car, listen to it in your commute. It'll make you think. It is a very, very incredible book, and this is just one of many, many stories we could talk about forever and ever. But yeah, when everything's telling you that it's too much, when everything's telling you that it's too dangerous or you just don't have the courage to do it, that's the most important decision of your life right there, whatever that is, to take that one step and to meet it. And God will bring you and give you power to get victory over that in ways that you never thought possible. And then the next time will be a bigger thing, and the next time will be a bigger thing. Bigger steps, and before long you'll be in the street with a megaphone, right? Hopefully not. Not a fan of that style of evangelism, but of course, maybe some people are called to that. Hopefully not me, ever. All right, thanks for watching. Keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you guys on the next video.